Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you in the third Mobilizing Mobility Police webinar. Our topic today is campaigns to support zero-emission mobility solutions. I'm Balázs Németh, Project Officer of POLIS, the leading European network of cities and regions on urban transport innovation. Welcome, everyone, in the Mobilizing Mobility webinar series, a brand new webinar series launched by the POLIS network. We decided to launch this new series after our successful post-lockdown mobility webinar series, which ran from April to June and help our member cities and regions navigate to COVID-19 crisis from a mobility perspective. While our webinars on post-lockdown mobility were only accessible to POLIS members, the Mobilizing Mobility webinars will be open to anyone interested. Before we dive into today's webinar theme, here is an overview of the topics that we are going to feature this month on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So our next webinar is going to be on Thursday on changing the parking fundamentals. Then next week, we have another 2 webinars on inclusive mobility for an inclusive society. And on next Thursday, how to make mobility work for all, embracing inclusiveness. I would like to introduce myself. I'm going to be the moderator of this webinar, and my colleague is going to support me to give a police perspective to this webinar. Maria José Rojo, the coordinator of Active Travel and Health, is going to give a presentation what police is doing in its Active Travel and Health working group. But before Maria would start with the presentation, I would like to give you some instructions about this webinar. This meeting is going to be recorded. The recording will be sent to you afterwards. Please keep microphone muted when not speaking. And you can use the questions and answer box to write your questions during all the presentations. And we are going to have a questions and answer session at the end of the webinar where all our presenters are going to answer your questions. So I would encourage everyone to ask. And now let's dive into our topics for today. What is police for doing for active travel and health? Maria, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Balázs. It says I cannot share the screen until you stop sharing it.
I stopped it.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this third Mobilizing Mobility webinar. My name is Maria José Rojo, and as Balázs said, I'm coordinator of the Active Travel and Health Working Group. And today I will give a very short presentation on how policy is supporting the promotion of active travel in times of COVID. Internationally, the COVID crisis is creating a new urgency for streets and public spaces which are safe and inviting to walk and cycle. The active modes are currently high up in the agenda amid the global discussion about our communities, our transport systems, and our health. The pandemic has provided a unique opportunity to exploit this moment and momentum to inspire political and policy change, not just in response to the crisis, but as part of the recovery to embed the needs of people walking and cycling into governance frameworks, investment strategies, and transport system in a more permanent way. So one of the most important revelations of the pandemic was the disproportionate distribution of public space in favor of motorized traffic. And this situation, caused by car-centered design and planning of cities, poses not only environmental and space efficiency problems, but also results in safety issues in urban areas. Thus, a lot of the conversations and actions have pivoted on the need to reallocate urban space to promote active travel in diverse ways, by creating temporary cycle lanes, the enlargement of pavements, the closure of streets to motorized traffic, and other strategies. The largest urban mobility experiment ever has allowed many citizens to experience their cities as pedestrians and cyclists like never before, with more space, clean air, and less noise pollution. and this experience has the potential to bring lasting impact in our mobility behavior. The lifespan of temporary measures implemented provides an opportunity for local authorities to test a variety of solutions, measures, and observe them and then adapt them if necessary. Walking and cycling are not just more efficient and sustainable, the infrastructure needed is also more affordable to build and maintain as well as to use, and this will be crucial in view of the economic crisis ahead. So since the beginning of the pandemic, POLIS has been active in promoting the exchange of knowledge between its members in order to better cope with the challenges posed by the crisis, including promoting active travel. Since the early stages of the lockdown, POLIS took stock and disseminated the responses taken by public authorities to keep things moving during the crisis, to help cities and regions in these very challenging times. As cities emerged from the lockdown, some cities in Europe included measures to promote active travel in their post-lockdown mobility plans, building on the actions taken during the lockdown. In the webinar series for members, which many of you already know, best practices were shared and expert views as well on the topics which were most relevant for cities from the mobility perspective. 17 webinars took place in 2 months, and these webinars allowed us to gain further knowledge on the needs of cities and the solutions provided. Something that became apparent is that cities that had been planning for sustainable mobility from earlier before had been able to fast-track their plans due to the crisis. In addition to the webinars, POLIS also organizes the named tailored technical meetings, which are closed meetings for a small group of members to discuss issues that are of specific interest for them. One of them was organized, for example, to discuss about light infrastructure for segregated cycle lanes. And we encourage POLIS members to let us know if there are any specific topics they would like to discuss with their peers or gain more expert views on them. We are open. POLIS has also made an effort to represent the voice of cities and regions towards the European institutions, and to make sure that active travel is included in Europe's strategies. The letter to the European Commission, European Exit Strategy must show strong support for sustainable urban mobility, signed by POLIS and other organizations, expressed these views. Soon after, European Commission's guidance on COVID-19 lockdown exiting recommended that urban areas could consider temporary enlargement of pavements and increased space for active mobility options, and reducing speed limits of vehicles in increased active mobility areas could be considered. Another important milestone in this regard is the new paradigm for safe city streets. And well, in order to put the European Commission guidance on COVID-19 lockdown exiting into practice, and based on good practices from cities all around Europe, POLIS has co-authored the COVID-19 SUMP Practitioner Guide, a very practical document for decision makers and practitioners, covering a wide range of topics, among them measures to promote active travel. And we're currently working on a more extensive publication with consolidated recommendations for cities. So that's a very brief overview of POLIS activities, and I would like to welcome the speakers today, and thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you, Maria. I'm gonna share my screen again. Yes, and in today's webinar, as you have heard when you registered, we are featuring the European Mobility Week campaign, which this year is gonna start tomorrow until the 22nd of September. And also the 9th SUMP Award, which applications are open until the 31st of October. The European Mobility Week campaign puts a spotlight on the importance of accessibility to zero-emission transports and promotes an inclusive framework involving everyone in 2020. It encourages people and local authorities across Europe to take steps to achieve the long-term goal of a carbon-neutral continent. I would encourage all of you to send an email to your cities, or if you are a city representative, to register for this year's European Mobility Week campaign, as already 2,368 cities registered. You can find more information on mobilityweek.eu. And one of the awards of the European Mobility Week campaign is the SUMP award, which supports the sustainable urban mobility plans of cities. The application is open until the 31st of October, and it also features the topic of zero emission mobility for all. So we encourage all cities who have a strategy in middle or long term how to make their cities carbon neutral to apply for this award. More information can be found in mobilityweek.eu per SUMP award. And now I would like to introduce our two distinguished speakers of today, Jelena Nikolic and Sophie Walshap. Jelena Nikolic is an architect working as an advisor for sustainable urban mobility and energy efficiency. Author of Kruševac first sustainable urban mobility plan, the first SUMP in Serbia, supporting other cities in regions to develop SUMP as an expert. Member of the working group within the National Association of the Cities and Municipalities for the Sustainable Urban Mobility and the European Urban Mobility Week campaign. Our second speaker is from Sophie Walshap from Brussels capital region. Sophie works for the Brussels Regional Administration. She is responsible for bicycle promotion. In 2016, she launched the Bike for Brussels, a branding which streamlined all communication and which will allow Brussels to get more and more people on their bikes. The Serbian city of Kruševac impressed the jury with its wide range of activities, underpinned the strong citizen participation and political support from the local government. During the European Mobility Week campaign in 2019, the city streets enjoyed a new burst of life without cars, not only in the center, which was taken over by pedestrians, but also in the suburbs, when people organized a variety of activities. That's why Kruševac won the European Mobility Week Award in 2019. And now I would like to invite you, Jelena, to tell us the local story.
Thank you, Balázs, for the nice introduction and for the invitation. Hello from my side and Edgar as well. I will start to share my screen. I hope you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, as you said, I will introduce some of the activities that we have organized in last year and previous years in European Mobility Week. But at first, I would like to give some brief information about the city of Kruševac, which is approximately 200 kilometers from the capital city of Belgrade on the south. It's a middle-sized city established in 14th century, and back then it was the capital city of Serbia. It has around 125,000 inhabitants, and approximately 63% of population lives in urban part of the city. This is an image of the special plan, and you can see that on the south area we have the mountain and some beautiful spa with hot spring water. And we are quite famous as a city of actors, but we also have a nickname, Charapani, which means those who wear socks. So we can use our nickname that we had in a few centuries ago to promote our city as a pedestrian city. Since by the model split in 2016, the main mode of transport in the city is walking, 44%. But although this seems like very good figures, as many other cities, we had the problem that number of cars increase every year. So we need to work to get these active modes of transport more in model split. More information you can see here on website, where is our SUMP. As I said, we need to promote walking and cycling and public transport. And in previous years, city invested in improvement of infrastructures, widening the sidewalks and improvement of infrastructures for people with disabilities, also some cycle paths and new greenery. And as an example of some permanent measures that we have conducted last year, we had the transformation of one city square where one street was turned off into the parking, so into the park. So the park was extended. In the vicinity was constructed a public garage, so all the on-street parking was removed. As you said, we had the problems that that cars were parked all over the square and also on sidewalk. So after the transformation, we had new walking paths and also new bike lanes. Beside that, since we want to encourage people to cycle more, but we don't have enough cycling infrastructures, we have in some streets, so we use the opportunity when we reconstruct some streets to introduce the bike lanes. And what is also important to raise awareness, not only about the air pollutions, but also about the noise pollution. So we use the opportunity that during the European Mobility Week, we organize with Public Health Institute some workshops and measure the noise level on public spaces, and to show the school children the effects of the traffic on our environment. And it's not only important to raise awareness about the noise and air pollution, but also how to develop the infrastructure. I just show some images here. You see before and after photos on several junctions in our city were transformed from the junctions with traffic light into roundabouts with some greenery, sculptures and fountains. And you can see on these images that our traffic planners are quite aware that we have the pedestrians, and these pedestrian crossings should be nice and smooth and without barriers, with low curbs or no curbs, which is quite good and nice. But also you can see that there are no bike lanes. So what we have noticed that our traffic planners are not aware that we have the cyclist as a traffic mode in our city. So we saw this challenge, and we figured out how to make it more visible. So at first, not only that it is important to create bike lanes and bike paths, there are some cheaper measures that can affect on visibility of cyclists. So on more than 30 locations in the city, we put this bike parkings, this U profile, and we put it next to the road surface, so the parked bikes are more visible. Previously they were put some on the back in some shade, or maybe there are no bike parking, so people just tied their bikes on traffic signs or near the tree, but now we put them in front of the road surface to be more visible. And also there are some spots with these bike repair toolkits. We have also organized campaign and put the labels on the public bus to keep the distance between the bicycles and the cars. Also, how to make cyclists more visible, we installed the bike counter on one street. And since it was installed this year at the end of the February, and you can see on this image that in 3 months we had more than 40 cyclists, which is quite remarkable, since that in that period we had very strict lockdown. Even now it's the number even bigger. And also what is interesting about this project is that in this street, I didn't put the image, but I will explain what we have done. In this street, we have the 4 car lanes and it is long about 2 kilometers. And we had the problem that usually we have a really high speed there, and we try to lower the car speed with some bumpers and traffic lights, but that was not so successful. So a few months ago, we have used the end on the both sides, these car lanes, and turn into cycle lanes, 2.5 meter wide. So the vehicles, motor vehicles can use only 2 lanes, and in the middle is full line, so it is not allowed to overpass. Our idea was to create a surface for the cyclists, but as the effect of that measure, we had that traffic is slower than it was before. So we didn't count that we will have that effect on speed limit, but this measure also affected on traffic safety as well. Since it is quite important to make it visible, and we also make several city cycling tour during the year, and when we invite citizens of all ages to participate in order to also make this promotion of not only as a recreational activity, but as a mode of transport. And it is quite important when you organize European Mobility Week to make activities and to include the participants of all ages and all disabilities. So as you see on this image on the right bottom, we have this tandem bike so that people with visual problems can participate in these cycle routes. And also we had some activities with Association of Diabetics where we measure the level of sugar in blood before and after walking or cycling, just to raise awareness about how active mobility affects on our health. The Car-free days as a special part of European Mobility Week, we can say that affected a lot on transformation in our city and also on some development. And since City of Kruševac participated since the beginning of the manifestation from 2002, but at the beginning we celebrated only Car-free Day, but from 2015 we became a gold participant. And not only that we closed the city center for cars on one day, but in 2015 we make a decision to close it every evening during the whole week. And why we did it, you can see on this image like traffic jam that occurs every day. And just a moment. Interesting that decision makers said, okay, we have the traffic jams because we have a lot of pedestrians, and that's why we have this situation every day. So as a result, they wanted to put a traffic light on this pedestrian crossing. But my colleague and I had a different approach, and we said, no, pedestrians are not a problem, the cars are a problem. So let me try during this week in 2015 to close the street every evening and to see what will happen. And actually it was very positive result, and especially the children like it. And that year we organized some interesting sport and cultural activities. But because their reactions were very positive, every next year we expanded this duration of closing the city center. So last year it was closed for traffic from the mid of April until the mid of October. And we have just noticing what is happening. There are some positive feedbacks and some negative feedbacks. And the good thing is that decision makers change their attitude about the usage of public space. And since the next year in 2021, it will be 650th anniversary of our city. They have decided to transform the city center. The positive effect of this measure was that we have learned that the children learn quite fast, and they occupy this space and learn that every day the street was closed, and they use it for they play, for riding the bikes or some scooters. But we have also learned that an adult car drivers don't learn quite fast, that we had a problem because we have the online street park. The positive effect that was that shop owners on ground floor didn't have the negative effect of this measure, and it was also a positive effect because on the upper floors are residential area, and they noticed that there is a noise level quite lower than it is usual. We had some grumblings from bus drivers because most of the bus lanes goes there. But after that, last year, we have organized a public participation survey to ask our citizens how they imagine the city center in 2021. And based on the results, 50% say that they would like to see it as a pedestrian zone in some variations, like with cycle lanes or with public transport. Only 6% say that they would like to remain the same. And as a consequence, now we have the construction works, and you can see how it looks nowadays. So now the city center is closed for the construction works. And there will be some modification. It will not be a fully pedestrian zone. There will be some extension of the existing pedestrian zone, but the surface for the pedestrians will be widened, and there will be cycle paths, and all the car parking will be removed. So because we have the public transport main node in city center, so public transport will also remain there. But with this measure, we would like to discourage cars to access the city center. They will go there, but much slower than they go now. And for the activities, what we have planned for this year, tomorrow we will have a very special event since we were the winners of European Mobility Award. Then the national openings will be in the city of Kruševac, and we will be the guest from with the national coordinators of ministry and standing conference, Association of Cities, and also some guests from European Union. And with this that will be opportunity that from the Embassy of European Union in Serbia will give the trophy to our mayor. Beside that, we will have also some cycle tours, some promotion of permanent measure like new public spaces and new pedestrian infrastructures. And since the topic is mobility for all without any negative aspects, we have new public transport lines with e-minibuses, and it is free to use for all citizens and tourists because it was subsidized by the city, so there were no tickets for these two public transport lines. And that will be all from my side. If you want to see the video of how we have organized European Mobility Week in 2019, you can see the link here and you can see the video. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Jelena. It's very impressive what you did in Kruševac. Now, before I'm going to share my screen again. Yes, before I invite Sophie to give her presentation from Brussels, I would like to tell everyone that Brussels Capital Region was the winner of the 8th SUMP Award last year. The city has set itself clear and ambitious sustainable mobility goals, which include having zero road traffic deaths by 2030, restricting car usage, reducing the speed limit to 30 kilometers per hour by 2021, and increasing the number of pedestrian zones. The city's achievements are underpinned by strong stakeholder outreach, impressive citizen participation, and the implementation of superblocks and innovative urban mobility planning concept. Now, Sophie will present how Brussels is becoming a more and more cycling city, which I can only agree on as a local resident. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the compliment as a local resident. I am going to share my screen, but I am on a small screen and I just don't know how to get back on it. Yes. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so as already said, I work for the Brussels government, and as we won the SUMP award, that means that we've been working for several years about a real SUMP for the whole Brussels region. We've been working also for the last like 5-10 years on increasing cycling infrastructure and also working on communication. But this pandemic, we saw it really as a big moment and a momentum to grab, to install even more cycling policy and to increase the measures we were implementing since years. And so this makes that today I can tell you about Brussels, a Corona cycling story. During this lockdown, just for you to understand, Brussels went into the lockdown on 30th of March, and the schools were closed by that time, and everyone that could work at home should work from his home. And by the half of May, we started a deconfinement. Progressively with schools opening, but people that can work at home still were able to work at home, and even now, as I am still working at home, for example. And during this lockdown, we saw that a lot of people started to use their bikes to go out, because we were still able to go out to get some fresh air. And so we saw that there was a real big increasement of number of cyclists during the weekend, for example. One that made that we had to take measures for that, but it also showed us that there were some measures we could take for the deconfinement. And Brussels is a city where not everyone has a big house and a garden, so we have a lot of people living in apartments, and that is also a reason why we had to take some measures. Well, one of the first measures we took was that we changed our traffic lights on our regional streets. Brussels is as a regional authority, but we have 19 municipalities. That means that we have some streets that we treat, but there are also a lot of streets that are treated by the municipalities. But for our own streets, we decided to change the traffic lights, at least at 100 of the 500 we have. That made that the pedestrians and the cyclists did not have to wait that much time to cross the street. And so they could keep their social distancing even more. And having fixed cycles also made it possible that people did not have to touch the button. A second measure is that we opened discussion with the municipalities, asking them to create some temporary residential areas, to some traffic cuts, to make it really possible to have the streets back to as I said, a lot of people don't have an own garden, so it was important that they could go to streets, but that they also could keep their social distancing. And so a lot of municipalities created these temporary residential areas, and we helped them with putting some blocks, for example. Then a third measure, and that was really a big one, is that we identified 40 kilometers of extra cycle paths we could create, and we could create it quite easily and quite fast, because we did not need a permission, and we decided to work with paint and with blocks and not with big infrastructural exercises. The first road we attacked, as we could say, is the Rue de la Loi, which is really in Brussels a big axe for people coming from outside of Brussels. And on the first picture you can see how it is normally on this street, like a normal work day. And a lot of years ago we already installed a cycle path there. But during the lockdown, we took one of the 4 lanes So we reduced car lanes to 3, and we created a real big cycle path, which is bi-directional. As I said, we decided to work a lot with paint and a lot with New Jersey blocks, and we've been working a lot on the big axis where the people use to commute and come to Brussels. And here you can see 2 pictures, one of a cycle path which was created with blocks and the other one with paint. On the second picture, you see there were 3 lanes and we reduced it to 2 for the cars. Some more pictures. And another part of these 40 kilometers is the entrance of the highway in Brussels. On the map you see, I cannot show it because we're not in live, but the highway really ends in Brussels, and there are 2 exits already in Brussels. And we've created on the emergency lane, we put some blocks and we opened this one for cyclists. So that means that between those 2 exits, people can use it with their bikes. As you can see here, it's a little bit strange because you really are on the highway, but it really opens a lot of space for cyclists. And then the 4th measure we've been working on is the communication. As I said, since a couple of years, we really were working on our bike community and our positive cycling communication, because we work a lot on infrastructure, but it's also important to let people know about infrastructure and show them to make them aware about the good things of cycling. So we wanted to keep this community informed, but it was not easy because it was not the purpose to say to everyone, hey, get out of your houses and get on your bikes, because we were supposed to stay at home. But people could go out and people could take some air, could go for shopping. And so we used these moments to talk about positive cycling. For example, on this slide, you can see, well, social distancing, cyclists have been doing it for years, and the reasons why people could go out for to take their bike for example, to have some free fitness, because I suppose we all know about the Corona kilos, to do some shopping for the grandma, or to get them to buy some toilet paper for the neighbor. We also focused on thanking the deliveries. We've seen in Brussels that during the lockdown, the cycle deliveries really were booming. Some shops who had to close, they started a web shop and started some delivery with bikes. So we thought, oh, this is, we were already convinced that this is the way of the future to deliver, but the lockdown has shown us that really it is the way of the future. And at the beginning, the bike shops, they were closed, but on a certain moment they were able to open and to repair bikes. And we knew that there were a lot of people that wanted to get on their bikes, but their bikes needed to be repaired before. So we really communicated about the reopening of the bike shops. And so at the moment we could deconfine a little bit in May, and when the children could go back to school temporary, we said, okay, there's a lot of people that got on their bikes during this lockdown. We should have a positive campaign telling them, well, you got on your bike, it was good, but keep on biking. The name of the campaign was Pédalons à fond. In Dutch, it is blijven trappen. And the idea really was, what, okay, you got on your bike, well, stay on your bike. And don't get back in your car when you come back to Brussels to work or for school. With some positive slogans, for example, you look good on your bike. We created 40 kilometers new cycle paths for you to keep on biking. Forget about your coffee in the morning, your bike will wake you up. Or when your kids get on their bike, it's better for their moral, keep on biking. And we joined to this a web page where we gathered all the information that would be important for someone who wants to start biking. For example, some formations. Where can I get my bike repaired? Where can I ride? where can I buy a bike? Where can I stall my bike? How can I protect my bike? How can I get my children on their bike? And so this was a unique page with all the information, and it was already sent, the information was always sent to our partners who are able to get this information. And with the call to action on our campaign, we had 18,000 visitors on these pages, which is really a lot, and it showed that in Brussels, people really wanted to go on their bikes. During summer, we knew that a lot of people would not go on holidays, and we wanted to continue that positive idea of getting on your bike to discover your own city. And so we created a community blog, and we've asked some bloggers and some people that really are positive about biking to write us a little story about where do you go to Brussels with your bike, what's to be seen, where do you like to go for a drink, which park do you like. And so we try to promote cycling through this staycation idea. As I said, there were a lot of people that wanted to start riding their bike, but which the bike needed to be repaired. And as we knew that the bike shops were really full, we started to organize as the local authority some bike repairs. And for example, this week during Mobility Week, we are at 5 different municipalities repairing bikes of the citizens. At the beginning of this school year, we also knew that there were going to be a lot of more pupils going to school with their bikes. So we offered our schools the possibility to have some temporary bike storages, which makes it possible to see how many bikes really came to school and to find the best place in the school to put the storage. And at the end of this month, we will give them some final storages to put in their schools. And also at the beginning of this school year, we started another positive campaign working with 3 ambassadors. One girl who does everything on her bike, one commuter, and one mom with 2 kids. And we ask people to give us their tracks. If we say, okay, if you're still a little bit afraid to get on your bike, well, we have 3 ambassadors and they really do everything. Show them their track and they will get the track for you and they will comment the track. So that's what we're working on now. And with my final slide, I just want to show you this. This year, the 1st of September, we had 44% more cyclists compared to last year. So it means that this Corona cycling story really is a real story with a lot of result. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your exciting presentation, Sophie. I will please stop sharing your screen.
Isn't it done? No, okay.
Yes, now it's. And I will go back to my presentation. And yeah, we arrived at the end of the presentations. So I opened the floor for the questions and answers session. We already received some questions. So first, I would like to ask all the panelists to unmute themselves because I'm gonna direct the questions to them. The first question is directed to Jelena. Jelena, has there been any attempt to convince motorists that the walkability improvements will also improve the driving experience, as it turned out in the Netherlands over recent decades? It might help stem any opposition, especially if coupled with public transport improvements, noting that car users tend to have longer commutes in the first place.
Okay, I may say that the city of Kruševac is the city of short distances, so which means that the majority of trips can be on foot and by bike, but we are very spoiled. Even for these short distances, we have a lot of cars. And also about this habit that people try to park their cars close to the end of their destinations. So if they can park in front of the shop or restaurant and work. So yes, they are aware of necessity of the improvement of pedestrian infrastructures, and since we have very narrow streets, we get used in this driving with a lot of pedestrians and cyclists on the street. But on the other hand, there is a problem of low level of awareness of car drivers and about the parking on the sidewalk. So we have to work with our campaigns to increase their awareness of this habit that affects on people with disabilities or parents with baby strollers. If you occupy the sidewalk with your vehicles, and there is also a very bad habit, if you use all the lights, yellow lights on your cars, and just for a couple of minutes and park on the cycle lane because the car driver needs to finish some job in shop. So I hope that I answer the question.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So the next question I see is, I think, to Sophie, but maybe Jelena, you can add your opinion as well. How do you think cyclist pedestrian numbers are going to evolve with the winter coming up? Do you think the combination cold, bad weather plus COVID fear of public transport will cancel out recent positive evolutions? Sophie, what do you think?
I think it's a really important question because every year we know that number of cyclists increases when it's getting colder, when it's getting darker. So I really don't know what to expect, because if the tendency of every year is also there this year, then there should be less cyclists. I think pedestrians won't change because people don't walk like 5 kilometers to their work. They find another way, and people who do a last mile walking, or would do some physical exercise or some shopping walking, they won't change their habit. But the cyclists, there might be maybe an issue, but every year since like 10 years, we organize an action we call Be Bright, Use Light, which makes cyclists aware about the importance of having their own lights in winter, because a lot of cyclists think, well, there is some city light, so I am visible. Well, not. Every cyclist should have its own lights. And I think this year we always organize it with some breakfast to have like the community meeting each other. This year, this week, after Mobility Week, we will start thinking about how to organize it this year, because organizing a breakfast and having like all the pastry in the same on the same place is not what we should be organizing this year. But the importance of having their lights with all those new cyclists, I think it is super important to make them aware about it. So I don't have the real answer to the question, but we're working on it, and we're thinking about how keeping them on their bikes.
We are going to find out very soon, but even looking at the weather in Brussels today, it's not that very soon, maybe. Jelena, do you have anything to add for this question?
Yes, related to winter time, since this climate change, I may say that the weather is changed in Kruševac and in Serbia. I remember a few years ago, maybe a decade ago, we had winter with a lot of snow. But nowadays we have almost no snow. I mean, if we have it just maybe one day or two. So what we have noticed the last winter, we had a cyclist every day. and even during the winter time. As Sophie mentioned, we organize also some campaigns about bike lights to make more visible for other roads users. Sometimes during the winter time we don't have a snow, but there is a fog, so you need to be visible more.
Thank you. The next question is to Sophie. The decrease in motorized vehicle in some cases has resulted in speeding. Has Brussels got any plan to ensure the enforcement of speed limits in the city center?
Well, thank you for this question, because it makes it possible to talk about our City 30. We will, and you talked about it with this SUMP award. Well, the 1st of January, we will implement what we call the City 30, which makes it a zone 30 of 30 kilometers per hour on almost the whole Brussels region. Acceptance for some big axes where we should keep traffic with car traffic to make it possible that they don't go to the streets where people really live. And with this measure, which is really a big measure we will implement in Brussels, we will enforce camera, we will enforce work with police, and we will really increase number of control we are affecting on the streets. Well, as I live in Brussels, I go to school every day with my kids with the bike, and we've seen there's a less traffic now than normal days. Still, people don't come really much with their cars to Brussels, and they really stay on the big axis where before they would try to Waze some other streets. I suppose in every country you know what Waze is. They are on some small streets where people live, where people should just cycle. And now we just don't see them anymore. They really stay on the big axis where it is most of the time 50 per hour. And so that makes it possible when you cycle, you are really, it's nice and it's okay to take your kids to school, and it's easier.
Thank you. Jelena, can I ask you what is the model share in Kruševac currently? And do you have any problems with the increased car traffic in the city center?
Well, we have the data in 2016, so 4 years ago, and we are now implementing a survey to collect the data, what happened in this 4-year period. So in 2016, we had 44% of pedestrians, 3% cyclists, 19% public transport, 2% taxi, and 32% of car usage. Nowadays, because we have a construction work, so there is not so much traffic in the city center, but in ring around the city center, the car traffic is increased. But what we have noticed this year with this pandemic situation, that as I mentioned, we don't have so much cycling infrastructure, but we have a bike factory in our city, and we have the information from them that all their production is sold out in advance. These pandemic situations encourage people to buy bikes more, and we have noticed that we have more cyclists in the city, but we will have the data in a couple of months. And also I saw the question about the pandemic and lockdown. At first, since we had a very strict lockdown, the public transport was cancelled, and the car parking was free. But since the schools were online and some companies and public institutions organized work from home, that affects that these commuting trips were less. So that didn't cause so much traffic jams, since the people that use public transport use car. But nowadays public transport operates again, and the people that often use this mode of transport again use it, but with some measures, with masks and some distances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that you are going to get back all the users of the public transportation system as you had before the pandemic.
Yeah, we hope so, yeah.
There is another question for you, Sophie. It's very specific. First, have all the 40 kilometers of bike lanes have been created already? Secondly, why does a Velo box cost 60 euro in Brussels per year in comparison to the parking permit, which costs just 28 euros? What will you do to change that?
This is not a pandemic-related question, but I will answer it. We are now at 26 kilometers that have been done. And we have some next steps in the coming weeks. Why did we take like more 3-4 months to have all these works done? Because we have to sign the plans, because even if we are with paint and with some New Jersey blocks, we also have to we always have to design the plans. We have to discuss the plans with all users and not cyclists, not only cyclists. We also have PMA, which is the disabled people, with pedestrians, and also with cars, because the fluidity cannot change on these big axes. And afterwards, we have to get the permission to do the works, and we have to have the entrepreneur on the spot. So it takes a while, even if we were able to go fast, but now we are at 26 kilometers and work is still going. And about the Velo boxes, I'm very much aware about that it's not a social measure to have a higher price for a bike than for a car. But the important thing about this is that you have a fixed place for your bike. When you pay only 28 euros for your first car, because the second car is more expensive, you can still have to try to find a place in the evening. Your box is a fixed place, and you always know that your place will be free and that you can park your bike. But with the idea of why is it more expensive than a car, I can fully agree, and it does not depend on me to change it, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. There is another question to you, Sophie. Sophie, might congestion pricing be viable for funding the cycling improvements you outlined? Fewer cars could mean perceptions more conducive to cycling.
The idea of some congestion charge is a measure that is on the idea on topic of the political discussions since some years. We've been doing some studies. We more or less know what to do. Our new minister said 1 year ago that she really wants to advance on this point, even if the other regions would not want to. So I know it's on the table. I know that my colleague who works on it is working on it, but it will take a while to really have it. We already have a low emission zone. We have some cameras that are already there and that can help us. We are installing the city, the Brussels 30 city. So we're working priority on some other issues, but one day it will be there, and that will help us, of course, to have more money. Although it is not for it's not normally, some money comes in and some money goes out, but it's not that money that will be used for that. Mm-hmm. So it's big budget on a regional scale.
Thank you. And the last questions to Jelena. To your point about short distances, I was referring more to the intercity commuting in mention of long distances. In such commuting as significant motor traffic generator? And if so, have mitigating measures been put in place? Rural cycling paths, increased regional bus rain frequency, etc., etc.
Okay, yes, for the connection with rural part, with urban part, we don't have a dedicated cycle lanes, but only connection by public bus. It operates, and since the city of Kruševac has around 90 villages, this public transport service covers all villages in rural area. So if that was the
Okay.
answer, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. I think we have to end the webinar at this point. I will just share for a last minute my presentation. Can you see my screen? Not yet.
Not yet.
I think. Yes. So I would like to invite you for our next webinar, which is going to happen on Thursday on changing the parking fundamentals. And also I would like to thank you, all of you, to have joined to this webinar. It was a very interesting discussion, and also the experience from Kruševac and Brussels was very interesting, that we can learn from both of them. And I wish you a nice afternoon, and hopefully see you on Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.